Hare Krishna. You all can come friend so that I can connect to you easily. Thank you so much for coming today. Today is a very auspicious day. Today is a very auspicious day. It's the day of Dasra, and it's so nice to be in the association of devotees and also to hear Krishna Katha, especially from Bhagavad Gita. So we are all very fortunate to be here today. So I thank all of you again for coming to today's session. So we'll get started with the prayers in a very prayerful mood, begging for the auspiciousness and the mercy from the previous acharyas. You can repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Ajnanatirmirandasya
Om Ajnanatirmirandasya
Jnananjana Shalakaya
Jnananjana Shalakaya
Chakshurunmilitam Yena
Chakshurunmilitam Yena
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Nama Om Vishnupadaya
Nama Om Vishnupadaya
Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale
Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale
Srimate Bhakti Vedanta
Srimate Bhakti Vedanta
Swaminiti Namine
Swamini Namine
Namaste Saraswate Deve
Namaste Saraswati Deve
Gauravani Pracharine
Gauravani Pracharine
Nirvishesha Shunyavadi
Nirvishesha Shunyavadi
Pashatya Deshatarine
Prashatya Deshakarine
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhara
Shri Advaita Gadadhara
Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Everyone raise their hands.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Again, we are discussing from this very wonderful gem of the book, Bhagavad Gita, and whatever we are getting, it's only by the mercy of my founder Acharya, Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, by whose mercy this knowledge of Gita, the glories of Gita has spread throughout the world. And today we are discussing a very wonderful topic, do I need a guide in life? So we see like how Prabhupada, he has went at the age of 70, he has went all over the world and he has given this knowledge of Gita to everyone. Like he has not differentiated between this person, that person, this caste, this creed, anything. And this glory of Bhagavad Gita, via this glory of Bhagavad Gita, all our doubts will be cleared actually. If we like properly become a student of Bhagavad Gita, then the majority of our doubts that which we have in our life, via this Bhagavad Gita, we can actually eradicate. And today's topic is also like about this. Definitely, the question itself, it says that do you need a guide in life? Like at every phase of our life, we need a guide in life. There is no doubt about it. But on a deeper aspect, we'll try to understand what is the guide that we are speaking about, and why we need this guide at every phase of our life, without which like our life is just a struggle. So we'll start with like Arjuna. So like since we are discussing about Bhagavad Gita, so we can discuss about Arjuna the great warrior. We'll try to understand what's the difference between us and Arjuna. So like you see, the first difference is self-control. So when you would have heard the story like in Mahabharata also, that how when the damsel called Urvashi, when she came to meet Arjuna in the deep forest, so at that time Arjuna rejected her. It is actually, if you see these days, like people living in co-live and things like that, things have become so common, and self-control aspect, even like live about the higher aspects, even with the food, the self-control, it's not there for us. But we cannot even imagine what kind of self-control Arjuna had to reject such a beautiful damsel called Urvashi. And respect for elders. Definitely, at least in our generation, like 90s, we see that like we have some respect for elders, and there is some little tradition where we still fall down at the feet of our parents and things like that. But I see like next generation, like there is barely any respect left, correct? And even we see like earlier there used to be joint families and things like that, and they used to consider like everybody as their own. But now even our own people we don't consider as our like near and dear ones, and then respect is like a very very far thing. When it comes to Arjuna, we see that Dhritarashtra, you know, how much Dhritarashtra gave pain to Pandavas and Arjuna. At every phase of their life, Dhritarashtra has given pain, like be it like lighting the fire or be it sending to Vanvas. At every point, basically, tried to poison Bhima, so many things. But Arjuna was every point at every point he was respectful to Dhritarashtra. And you would be surprised to know that when all these Kurukshetra war ended, at that point of time, the like Vidura comes and he instructs Dhritarashtra to leave. And so, without telling anyone, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari they leave. When they leave, see, if any one of us would be there, we would be so happy that all this time, like we have suffered from the struggle. So now, like they've gone. But Arjuna, including all Pandavas, they were very upset that Dhritarashtra and Gandhari left their kingdom, and they were weeping and like trying to find out what did they lack so that the Dhritarashtra and Pandava they left. So you can imagine the kind of respect they have for their enemies. If we see, like if somebody hurts us even a little, next moment we don't even want to see their face. Even if they come close to us, we will just behave as if they are not around us. We will be acting as if we are living in a bubble, including me. So third thing is Arjuna's meditation to shoot the target. Like you can remember that incident of Swayamvara, like Draupadi's Swayamvara. What was the challenge? Fish eye. And was that fish static? No. And can he see up and throw the arrow? No. It was such a challenge. Like there is a water surface, he has to look down, aim up, fix his arrow up, and the fish is rotating and he has to hit the fish. Is it? No. Fish's eye he has to hit. And he was successful. He was successful in winning the hands of Draupadi by seeing the reflection and hitting the eyes of fish. So we cannot even imagine how much focus and how much talented and how much concentration power like Arjuna has. He was all knowledgeable, he was all well cultured, like how we saw that he was respecting every person, and he was completely an expert. And such a expert, like when he was in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when he told that Ratha and Sthapena Achyuta, he told Krishna that please place the Ratha in between the armies of like Kauravas and Pandavas. And then when the Krishna took his chariot and he placed it in such a way that Krishna, like Arjuna, can see all his opponents. What did Arjuna see? Arjuna saw all his kinsmen, all his relatives, all his like near and dear ones, Bhishma Dev, his Guru Dronacharya, and he was like, he started shivering. This same Arjuna who didn't even think twice in hitting the eye of a fish without even seeing it, but when he saw his kinsmen, his relatives, and when he saw his Guru and dear ones, he was like completely depressed because he has to fight over them. And see, the best part about Arjuna is that when he went through that chaos, he never covered it into some story, and he showed himself as an expert warrior. We can imagine how, till now we were discussing how great Arjuna is, and then suddenly the emotions of the Arjuna changes, but Arjuna is still great because he didn't hide his emotions. Whatever the feelings he had for his kinsman, whatever he was going through, there was a shloka, it is said that how Arjuna is saying that my whole body is shivering, and then my hair is standing. No, when we are scared, we get suddenly goosebumps. So like that, my hair is standing, and my bow. What is the name of his bow? Anybody knows? Gandiva. So the Gandiva is I cannot hold the Gandiva. It's just falling. You can imagine the same Arjuna who used to fight all these days with his Gandiva, and he also had made up if somebody asked me to keep the Gandiva down, then I'll just vanquish them. Such a person is saying that I cannot hold the Gandiva now. I'm not able to bear that feeling of killing my kinsman, killing my relatives, killing my guru. And also he said that my skin is burning. So in this way he very boldly he accepts the emotions and feelings he is going through. And we also see that how Arjuna is much more greater than what we heard about. It's because he accepted these things and he accepted the shelter of the Lord. Because the battlefield, all he could do is he could just hide everything and then he could just go and fight. Definitely he would come victorious because he had all the skills. But Arjuna accepted that he needs help, and Arjuna went to take help from the supremost person, Shri Krishna, Lord Shri Krishna. And we also see, you can repeat this shloka. Karpanya dosho apahat svabhavaha prachami tvam dharma sammuda chetaha yad shreyasa nishchitam brohitam me shishyaste ham shadimam tvam prapannam. So again, this is from Bhagavad Gita 2.7. This is a very very famous shloka. So some of you were asking that we want to start reciting Bhagavad Gita shlokas, how can we start? So you can start with this shloka actually. First shloka, Dhritarashtra Vacha, that is also a very good shloka. And then 2.7, this is a very very wonderful shloka. And somebody can read the translation.
Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of misery, weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for a certain what is best for me. Now I am a disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me.
See, we can see the humility of Arjuna. What is he asking here? He is telling that because of the miserly weakness, I have lost all the composure and I don't know what is good for me. See, we have also gone through these situations, correct? Where we don't know. There are n number of options and we don't know what is good for us. We are just dead struck at one point. And Arjuna is telling that please, Arjuna was Krishna's friend. So Arjuna is telling now, please accept me as your servant, as your disciple. And then I am a soul surrendered unto you. Please guide me what to do because I don't know what to do. And we also see that how when we go through problem, what is stopping us from asking for help? Definitely we know that we need help, especially when even for the simplest of the simple problems, when we go through, we know that it's little help if I get, little guidance if I get, maybe I'll get through this much easily than pondering, thinking, worrying, wondering, brooding over it, going through all this cycle. Then what is stopping us from taking help? Any idea?
Self-respect, ego.
Ego.
Fear of appearing weak.
Fear of appearing weak. Yes. So this ego and fear of appearing weak, both are it's a very very big thing actually. Because every person in their view, they are perfect. They don't want to show anybody that I am weak. They don't want to show anybody that I am not perfect. They don't want to show that yes, I need help. I am going through this, I am going through so and so. I don't want anybody to know that yes, I am also going through this. But you see, material life is dukhalayam. It is filled with like miseries, and the more we like don't, because of our ego, we don't take shelter of the superior things, the more it will break us. And this act of I'm perfect, I'll be perfect always, I don't want to know what is right, and especially like I don't want to be corrected. That is like the pinnacle of ignorance and pinnacle of ego. And see, at the end of the day, it is just harming the person who is having this ego and who is having this closed mindedness that, oh no, I am all perfect, everything I speak is like perfect. So we see how we should accept the fact that we can all go wrong in life. Like if you were there in the last session, we discussed, right? Like at every point of our life, our mind cheats us, and we can go wrong. There is no perfect phase wherein we become all perfect and there is nothing that can go wrong. And you would have heard also about this phrase that to human is to earth. It means we are prone to do mistakes. But the best part is when we take guidance, know what our mistake is, learn from that mistake and move on, then actually we see that how our path becomes easier in whatever we do. It's not about just spirituality. In any phase of life, if we take, it becomes very easy. So like the learning here is that how we have to, like from the example of the great Arjuna, we get to know that when we know that yes, I'm wrong, or when we know that we are in need of help, we should keep aside all the ego, because you see that person is taking so much effort to take the ego all along, and just to stop, give up that ego and ask question, like we feel so light-hearted and we don't have to carry any baggage. And next thing is that so when it comes to asking help, now it comes to the picture that especially when it comes to the situations that we go through day in, day out, especially the like spiritual situations, then how can we take help? So we have to learn to take help from the spiritual masters, the gurus. And like again, there are so many gurus in so many phases of our life. So like definitely it is said that mother is our first guru. So we say mother is so selfless that mother wants to only teach us the best of the things. And the teaching starts from like day one, from when the mother gives us birth. And then slowly we see that how the actual teacher in our school, they takes the role of guru. But today we'll discuss more about, for us at our age, what kind of gurus we will be meeting in general, not just like in our, like what do you see in our profession or in our studies, something like that, but in our day-to-day life. So we have someone called as pre-advised gurus. So few people, especially our friends and relatives, who never come to us when we are in difficulty, but whenever we whenever we are passing some exam or whenever we are going through some big phase of life, they want to like come and give like free advice and free suggestions. They say maybe if you do this, it will be good for you. Maybe you have to do that. And especially our friends, they're the best free advice givers. So the like funny fact is that they give advice, they never follow it. So they always, especially the philosophy is that it feels so good to give advice, correct? To others especially. And when we are in difficulty, like there are 100 people who come in front of us and they say that maybe you should do this. And the second person comes and no, mate, this is wrong. See, whatever I have seen, based on this, you should do this. So out of nowhere, out of their own concoction, they give 100 things, and the one who follows those 100 things, we cannot even imagine what is the situation. And these like free advice gurus, like even we see that like passerby, sometimes like when we go in auto, the auto wala start giving us philosophy, and some thela wala start giving us philosophy, says that no, it shouldn't be like this, it should be like that. And these they're not our well-wishers. Like how I said, they're just passerby. They just get to know that we are in difficulty. We cannot even judge that are they happy about our difficulty or are they sad. And they just feel good by giving advice. So they just want to stop and give advice, thinking about like what they know and they want to do a knowledge check about themselves. And then yeah, for the self gratification, it gives so much satisfaction when we give free advice to others. You can see this one video. It's a very nice video. So you all also want to be graduated like this? So you see like how like that was a lighter note, but on a serious note, you see there is like next type of guru that we are discussing about, these exploiting gurus. Like this whatever the video that I showed, it was not created by me. If you see that, what is it mentioned? India Today. In India Today we began making this video. So like we see how everybody around us, when they get to know that we are like pressed by some situation, they want to make the most of that situation and they want to just loot us. And it's all over in any part of the world we go. And we see these exploiting gurus. We think that these will help us. Sometimes we fall for them. In fact, including the so-called people who are very much educated, even those, they fall for them and then they depend on them, and then they think that yes, these people, these are the ones who will help us. Like if you see in a materialistic way also, in Vedic scripture, in Vedic culture, three items we were getting very free. Anybody can guess? Some 3 items we were getting it for free. What are those 3 items? Which is very expensive these days. Yes? Knowledge, education. So we know earlier it was a Gurukula system, and even like now, like you cannot even imagine. Like I have a colleague of mine whose son goes to LKG. He's paying 2 lakhs. At least when I did my schooling, it was definitely not like this. I guess I would have finished my whole schooling in 2 lakhs. Then definitely college was little expensive, but at least schooling, that to pre-KG, what do they even teach in pre-KG, LKG? They teach just ABCD and 1, 2, 3, 4. For that 2 lakhs, come on. And then if you see what else, 2, 3 things I was discussing. So something else for which we pay huge amount these days, and people cheat us, and more than cheating, like people loot us. Medicines. See, you can imagine, it was said that Vaidyo Narayano Hari the doctors, they were treated like as good as doctor, like God, because they were curing the disease. And we see like in the Vedic culture, we see that they were not charging for all these medicines and things like that. But nowadays, even for a little fever, we go to, there was one clinic initially when I came to Bangalore, one clinic I went, and they treated me, they looted all my money, but nothing got cured. Because at that point of time, again, we are pressed with that scenario wherein we want our health to be good again. So sometimes we think that since I'm in a new town, that's okay, let me go and pay it. But even after paying, we see like so much of cheating happens that we don't get cured. And recently when I took one of my friend to doctor, at the end of the day she gave Dolo. I was very upset. I was so upset. See, at the end of the day, you pay, you do all the tests and you go through all the procedures, and then they give Dolo. Definitely they give some other 2-3 medicines, which was painkillers and things like that. But when they give Dolo, we feel like what kind of medicine? And even that we don't even know how they are passing out also these days. Like every profession, even we know how we passed out of engineering, so we don't have to discuss about it. And the third thing is justice, law. So earlier, all these panchayats and things like that, they used to be there, gram panchayats and things like that. And any dispute that used to happen, they used to give like proper judgment. But nowadays we see like two advocates, they come together, let's say two opposite advocates are there, they come together and they say that let's keep the case going on and on and on forever, so that they keep paying us and we keep looting them. On a materialistic phase, we see that how the things that are supposed to be, that we are supposed to get it for free, like the education, the health and the justice, so we are already being looted. And on the spiritual end also, there are many cheating spiritual organizations who loot us like front and back, especially people like us who are like very educated, so-called educated fools. So when they go through some difficulties in life, they fall for it, because what do the current generation wants? Instant, everything instant. We want instant solution. We don't want to go through the austerity. We want everything like ready-made. We want the solutions ready-made. We want the fixes ready-made. And if we see these spiritual organizations that are there also, currently some of the organizations, they say that Sambhog se Samadhi. What do they say? You do all the enjoying activities, self-gratification activities, and over a period of time, when you enjoy, when you get tired, you get self-realization. This is a very, very common sense thing, that there is no austerity involved at all, there is no reading of scriptures involved, there is no knowledge aspect involved at all. You just enjoy to the fullest, and someday you get so much tired of enjoying that you get realization. Has this any time happened in the past, that somebody out of nowhere he enjoys to the fullest, and then out of nowhere he comes out and he becomes self-realized? No. Also, like some organizations, they say that okay, you give me cash, I'll give you ash. I'll send you to this world, that world. And even I was hearing about this story about one Baba called Nirmal Baba, and he used to give some very funny solutions. That let's say somebody goes asking for promotions or something like that. See, first thing we should understand is, if that person is able to give promotion, why is he there? Who is not even working and who is sitting there, definitely. And second thing is, when somebody used to go to him for asking like I'm facing difficulties in my office and I'm not getting promoted and things like that, he used to ask, which color socks are you wearing? And then he used to say black. No, you should start wearing blue socks from tomorrow. Everything will get solved. And when some lady used to go that there's so much of fight in my house, and everybody is just troubling me, and then he used to ask that with puri, which color chutney do you eat? Then green one or red one? Then she says red one. Start eating green one, all your problems will vanish. And it is actually, I'm quoting all these things, and I feel very silly, very surprising, but there are thousands of people who pay and go to this sabha just to hear these things, live about asking questions, to hear these things. And so many if you go to YouTube and see videos, when like trying to find out few things. I saw there are so many YouTube videos wherein we see that people are paying 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, we don't even know how much amount. They're going to the sabha wherein they ask such like questions and then they get all these silly answers and they appreciate, they clap and things like that. And so like now we discussed that how there are free advice gurus and then they are like exploiting gurus and bogus gurus, like now we were discussing. Why do you think these bogus gurus exist in the first place? Any idea? They are like always trying to cheat, loot. We see like definitely like when we go, like when we are very much in difficulty and when we are pressed with the problem, and let's say our neighbor comes and says that, you know, you go to this person who's a very sadhu, santa, you go to him and he'll give the solution. It worked for me. When they say, even if we are educated and we have like degrees like PhD or MBBS or all these things, MBA and all these things, still we fall for it because we are pressed under that situation and we are not able to come out of that situation and we don't even know whom to take shelter of. And that's why, and today if you see, it's very easy to make money in this business, correct? Because like very rarely people know what is like what actual knowledge is, how we should get solutions to our problems, and that's why they have made this as their own like dhanda. And we also see that how people also, it's like in one of the lectures I was hearing that why these bogus gurus exist. It is also one fact about us that we also somewhere we want to get cheated. In what way? In a way that when we go through problems, we don't want a permanent solution to it. We want some hacks, we want some shortcuts, and we want some temporary solutions. And these people are here to give us some like fake solutions, some temporary solutions, and then they charge happily left and right. And one other thing is that, see, when we go through some like difficult scenarios, especially the material scenarios, so we approach these gurus. But actually, in actuality, if you see, guru is someone who helps us in spirituality. And we also saw that like how people don't know who actually a guru is and what qualification should be there in a guru. So we are just pressed in some situation, we are going through some difficulties, and then somebody gives us, this is the so-called Swamiji, so-called guru, and then just we end up in their area, and then we start asking. And then we don't know why to approach a guru also. Like how I said, guru is someone who is supposed to help us in our spiritual well-being. And like for material well-being, let's say we go to a guru, again he might give some solution here and there that definitely might give some like temporary benefits, but to what extent? To what extent that will help? And majority of the people, we say that they're neither well versed in the Vedic scriptures nor well versed in any of the fields of like Vedas, and they just, their main aim is to earn money, and that's why we go with the intention of getting our material problem solved, and they come with the intention of looting us. Both are on the material platform, just equal, just cancel each other. And also we see how like this question again, why do people try to go to the spiritual organizations? Any idea? In general, we hear so many spiritual organizations are there, and everybody these days we see that they say that I'm going to this organization, to that organization. What are they looking for, and why do they want to go to these spiritual organizations? To find answers. To find answers to what questions? Again, that also comes in picture. Like how I said, like let's say material questions like why am I not getting promotion? Let's say I go to a guru and ask why am I not getting a promotion? So in his mind he'll be telling even I don't know. I'm not getting, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I would have got a job, got promoted and got elsewhere. And then they go like, oh, I want a match for the marriage, and oh, I want solutions for the problems in my life and things like that. What is like, and you see like in general you think, no, like we see so many spiritual organizations are coming up these days, and people, they are in search of something, they are in need of something, because of which they are going to these spiritual organizations. What is that they are in need of? Peace. What peace? peace of mind, mental peace, then happiness, they say. If you see, like last session, we were discussing like about this thing that we read one shloka wherein it was said that, I don't know if you remember, Bhumi Rapo Annalo Vayu Kam Mano Buddhi Revacha, where we discussed that there are 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air and ether. And then we also discussed about how there are other 3 things also. What are these 3 things? Mind, intelligence and false ego, these 3 things. And like here when we discussed also this earth, water, fire and ether, it belongs to the gross body. We have 2 kinds of body, that is gross body and subtle body. So our gross body, as we can see, is made up of this Pancha Mahabhutas. And then the subtle body, it is made up of mind, intelligence and false ego. So do you all remember mind is material or spiritual? We had discussed. Mind is material. Yes, so when they say, see, when so-called people, when we all go to some spiritual organizations for peace of mind, so why are we going there? Basically to get something material again. And see, if we want to get something material, and let's say they are giving us also like peace of mind, happiness and so-called things, so they should rename their organizations as something like, what is that? This thing, counseling centers, or something like, what else will be there? Some like psychiatrist center and things like that, because we are in need of peace of mind. And see, in India, definitely it's like a tag that is given that yes, he is going to a psychiatrist, he is going to a psychiatrist. But in foreign countries, like how I was discussing, it is just very common. Every second day, they proudly go to visit a psychiatrist. And we see how when our intention is not right, then we are going to a spiritual organization or a spiritual guru to seek something material. We see, you can see, no, there is something that's not matching here. There is a spiritual organization which has to speak about what is the spiritual aspect in our in this whole picture. The only spiritual aspect in this whole picture is soul. So if somebody is not speaking about soul and the aspects of soul, about the spiritual nature of the soul, then that organization definitely cannot be called a spiritual organization. And if you also see how like these organizations, they want to give us help on a material platform, which is like, again, which is temporary, and majority of the time the only goal of these organizations will be either to loot money or to genuinely help us in overcoming something material. Again, that is also like, again, we are in trouble because our intention is wrong, their intention is wrong, and the whole concept of spiritual organization, spiritual guru is gone, like, wasted. See, one other point I want to make is that if you see about, if you know about all these like Muslims and Christians and people like that, you would be aware, like from small kids we are seeing that, right? From small they are learning their scriptures. They are knowing, they are having a very clear picture what spirituality means for them. And they study, like Muslims study Quran and like Christians study Bible. And like I had few friends like who, you know, they used to carry the pocket Bible like everywhere, wherever they go. And Sundays they used to have some exams for the, like, to give for the Bible. And even like Quran also, like they used to very strictly follow the like instructions that is given in Quran. They used to follow Roza, everything. They are like very pakka, if you see. But when it comes to like us Hindus, very rarely, like now, you know, when we go for book distribution, like earlier we used to ask, please take Bhagavad Gita. Now we have to ask, do you know about Bhagavad Gita? It's so hard that people don't even know that we have scripture called Bhagavad Gita, and we like there is something called Bhagavad Gita, there is something called Vedic scriptures, there is something called spiritual guru, there is something called spiritual organization. People in general don't know it. See, we are having this session mainly because definitely few of us might have gone through these kind of people, and few of us might not. We may feel this is like very silly, but you know, actually, if I have to say that, I have seen scenarios wherein when people are deeply going through some like hardships in their life, they like completely fall down, break down, and at that time these so-called cheating gurus comes in picture, and even like how I said, even the so-called educationalists, they fall for it. And we are all educated and we are all well known, but we can understand ourselves, correct? When we go through difficulties, we cannot even think like what is right and what is wrong. So it's very important for us to know what actually a spiritual organization should give and who actually a genuine spiritual guru is. And today we will discuss about the qualifications of the genuine guru. So we have come up with an acronym. It's called STOP. So you can all like remember or note down. So next time whenever you meet a guru or so-called guru, so you can like just cross-confirm that if they have these qualities. And again, these are not some self-concocted qualities that I am giving. These are all again from the scriptures, especially from Bhagavad Gita, that we have come up with these qualities. So the first quality of the guru is S. S means selfless. See, always you should remember that a genuine guru, he is always selfless. He is working selflessly for the benefit of the other living entity. And they will not have any ulterior motive. They will just think, how can I help this person so that this person becomes much better and he goes back with a positive note about life, with a positive feeling about life. And also we see how I was also discussing about the first guru that we have, our mother. From our mother themselves we can understand that how selfless a mother is. That is like the pinnacle of the qualification that any guru can have. Because a mother, whenever a mother says don't do this, don't do that, we see that it is for our own good. Even though it may appear like very bitter for us, like let's say a child is going to touch fire, or if the child is going, like when child is crossing the road, the mother is asking, don't leave my hand, hold my hand. Child is saying, what is my mother saying? Why should I even hold her hand? I am big enough now. So if the child thinks like that, the child doesn't know what is good and what is bad, but the mother knows. And the mother is, the qualification of the mother is so much selfless that the mother doesn't think if this person is feeling bad, if my child feels bad if I tell that or not. The mother clearly tells the child what is right, what is wrong. Because the mother is selflessly want the good of the child. And the second thing is the teachings based on the scriptures. We also see that at every point of time we should know that the ulterior thing on which we can depend on is Shastras. Three things basically: Guru, Sadhu and Shastras. And like now we are discussing about Guru, but these Guru and Sadhus also, they should completely depend upon the Shastras. And if you remember, we discussed about these Shastras are coming from the lotus mouth of Lord Krishna himself. And who more can be the best well-wisher than Krishna himself? So Krishna has given us this Vedic scriptures, and Srila Vyasadeva has compiled it. And when we get these Vedic scriptures as is, and somebody who is well versed in these Vedic scriptures, they can actually give us the solutions, genuine solutions, permanent solutions for our problems. And if you see any genuine guru, they actually ask us to read about the scriptures. They just don't give some concocted solutions. Like if you remember when we were discussing about this mind concept also, we came up with this philosophy that every human being has 4 defects. If you remember, we discussed about how every human being, the senses are imperfect. Anybody remember? Senses are imperfect. There is a cheating tendency. We are there is prone to be illusion. And the 4th one is that cheating. We are prone to do mistakes. So in this way, we see that any human being, if you take, definitely like how initially when I started this session also I started that there is a possibility that we become imperfect. There is a possibility that we do mistakes. And the Shastras are the sole basis which is given from the Lord, who is Achita, who is all conquerable, and is the absolute truth. It's like the perfected truth is given in the Shastras. And when somebody is following that Shastras, when somebody is preaching from that Shastras, when somebody is giving permanent solutions from that Shastras, we can recognize that yes, this person is a genuine guru. And third thing is our well-wisher. Like how I said, who can be a more well-wisher than Supreme Personality of Godhead, and somebody who is following the teachings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by our scriptures. And we also see that, when we meet a guru, so we can understand that He's a third person in our life, correct? He doesn't even know what we need, what we don't need. And third thing is, if he's out, like if he hears our problem and out of like his own mental things or his own experience, if he's giving solutions, to what extent that solution can work for us. And second thing is, we have to know that what is his intention. Even it is said that even the Vedic scriptures, let's say somebody is giving in a mood to earn money, then the intention, like the realizations the persons get by hearing that the Vedic scriptures, that's lost its sense. Like you would have heard about Bhagavad Saptah, correct? Like 7 days Srimad Bhagavatam they do. See, even in various centers in ISKCON also, we do Srimad Bhagavatam reading and hearing. In fact, you'll be surprised to know every day morning Srimad Bhagavatam reading happens in every ISKCON center, every ISKCON temple. And when people, so in general when we do Bhagavatam reading, so it is mainly to understand Lord. Vedescha sarve rahameva vedyam. So to understand Lord, to know Lord, and mainly you have to understand that religion means to love God. And here these Bhagavad Saptas that happen, so the main intention for them is to earn money. They get lakhs. If you've observed, like in South India it's not very famous, but in North India I heard that it's quite famous. And they book these Bhagavad Sapta years together, like for 7 days, and they pay lakhs together. And when the money aspect comes, when it comes to transfer of knowledge, it's lost. See, how much can we pay for this Vedic scriptures, which is like a gem of knowledge? We can never pay for the transcendental knowledge that we are ever receiving. And the true well-wisher is that one person who never expects anything from us. And also, if you've noticed, like some like random interviews, like I was seeing on net also, where let's say somebody is asking some question to the guru, and that guru, he doesn't know that question, he gets offended, he gets totally upset, and he starts cursing, or his other members, they start coming and they start like pacifying that person, don't ask questions and things like that. See, like when I asked Mataji, like what is the need, so to get answers, we are going to the spiritual organizations to get the answers for the questions. So many questions are there which our NCERT syllabus or our school and college syllabus, they cannot give us answers. We want the answers to those questions. And let's say we go to these like gurus and ask questions like how to overcome like birth and death. See, when we have problems also, one thing that I liked very much when I heard recently is that the real problem, maybe I would have discussed, the real problem is birth, death, old age disease. Why is this a real problem? Because this problem you can see in every single living entity. So if a problem is called real, if it is present for every single living entity, including birds, animals, every living entity, even the richest of the person like Elon Musk has to go through birth, death, old age disease. So there is no exception. And second thing is, it is forever. It's not like previously we had birth, death, now it's not there. No, now also it's there. It's a continuous problem, and it's for everyone. That problem is a genuine problem. And the best of the best problems that we have is birth, death, old age disease. We are just going through again and again, punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. So we see when we ask questions related to spirituality, if they are true well-wishers, definitely, and if they are well-versed in the scriptures, they can answer the questions. And if they are not able to answer the questions, then we can very well decide that yes, they are fake gurus. And the last one is parampara. So in Padma Purana it is mentioned about 4 paramparas. So first we will go through the shloka, then we will go through the paramparas. So can you like repeat what is the qualifications for genuine guru? Selfless, teaching from the Vedic scriptures, our well-wisher, and parampara. Parampara is disciplic succession. So you can repeat this beautiful shloka. Evam parampara praptim,
evam parampara praptam,
imam rajarashayo vidu,
imam rajarashayo vidu,
sakalena mahata,
sakalena mahata,
yogo nashta parantapa.
yogo nashta parantapa.
Anybody? Come back.
Science was thus received through the chain of disciple succession, and the safety things understood in that way. But in the course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost.
See, the first 3 that we discussed, that is selfless and teaching some scriptures and then our well-wisher. Maybe the first time we meet a guru, we cannot understand them. But this is one quality that the first time we meet them, we can clarify. Are they a bona fide guru or not? That is what Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita 4.2. The supreme science that was given, it is received through the chain of disciplic succession. Like, what is this disciplic succession? If you open any Bhagavad Gita, if you read right after introduction, there is a complete page that is given wherein it is mentioned that how the disciplic succession comes in place, how Krishna gives this education to next person and next person to next person, like this till the end. Whatever the paramparas we have, we see very very clearly it is mentioned that how the knowledge is transferred, how Krishna gives the knowledge to Brahma and then Brahma to Narada to Vedavyas, and like this the knowledge flows. And we also see how anybody who calls himself as a spiritual guru, he has to come in the disciplic succession that is starting from Krishna himself. And also we see that this is a very very technical parameter, like how I said last parameter, that last three parameters we may get cheated again in those also, but this is very very clear parameter. We get to know that they are from the 4 paramparas that we will discuss, so you can very very clearly decide. So you cannot repeat this shloka also. Sampradaya vihinaye mantraste nishvalamata atakalau bhavishyanti chatvara sampradayinah Shri Brahma Rudra Sanaka Vaishnava Shri Pavana Chatvaraste Kalo Bhavya Yutkale Purushottama Ramanujam Sri Chakre Madhvacharyam Chaturmukha Shri Vishnu Swaminam Rudro Bimbadityam Chatusanaha. So this is again from Padma Purana that we are reading. Here it is mentioned about 4 paramparas. So for a better understanding, we made this chart. So from Krishna emerges 4 parampara, and see, you can make it very very clear that there is no 5th parampara that is existing. Any guru who is bona fide, who is genuine, when you ask him, he has to be a disciple in any one of the 4 paramparas. So what are the 4 paramparas? One, there it is coming from Lord Brahma himself. It is called Brahma Parampara. Then second one, it is coming from Sri Lakshmi ji. It is called Sri Parampara. Third one, it is called Rudra Parampara, which is coming from Lord Shiva. And fourth one is it's coming from 4 Kumaras, and it's called Kumara Parampara. And we also see that how these paramparas, it's not that again somewhere it did not exist and today we have just brought it up. It is existing from the time of Krishna, and now we see from this parampara, you would have heard about famous acharyas like Madhvacharya. How many of you have heard about Madhvacharya, Srila Ramanujacharya? So these are the acharyas who are the representatives of these sampradaya. Like in Brahma Sampradaya, the acharya is Madhvacharya, and in the Sri Sampradaya, the acharya is Ramanujacharya. In the Rudra Sampradaya, the acharya is Vishnu Swami, and in the Kumara Sampradaya, the acharya is Nimbaraka Acharya. And also you can see these sampradayas even now. If you go to Udupi, there is a beautiful Krishna temple, and all over there the Madhva Sampradaya is still being followed. And even this Sri Sampradaya you can see all over South India. They'll be wearing tilak, the nama they'll be wearing 2 white and between red, very big namas they'll be wearing. You can see even in Tirupati and places like that. And this Nimbarakacharya also, this in Rajasthan and Gujarat area, and this Nimbarakacharya, this Kumara Sampradaya, you can see they're still existing in this Mathura area. And like how I said, so whenever you go to any guru, so 4 qualifications. One is selfless, so it's teaching based on scriptures. 3 is our well-wisher. 4th one is parampara, and 4th one very most important, very very clear, very very technical, that you can ask them a question from which parampara you are belonging to, and if they say that I am a person who is a self-made guru and my parampara is self-made, which means that you can like very very clearly you can clarify that they are a bogus guru. And see, because like how I said, again very very clear from scriptures that these 4 sampradayas, they are following the teachings directly from Krishna himself, and anything that which Krishna is not giving, it is not perfect, because I said, I discussed, no, 4 imperfections will be there, and because of those imperfections, there is no point that they will give us truth. It's all concocted truth, which will never help us. Now, till now we discussed about first aspect, like how to know who is a very genuine guru, who is a spiritual guru. Now we will see how we can approach a spiritual master, who is a spiritual guru. You can read this, you can repeat after me. Tadvidhi pranipatena
Tadvidhi pranipatena
Pariprashnena sevaya
Pariprashnena sevaya
Upadeshanti te jnanam
Upadeshanti te jnanam
Jnaninas tattvadarshinaha.
Jnaninas tattvadarshinaha.
Anybody can read loudly?
Just to try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, implies something submissively and render service unto you. The self-reliant souls can impart knowledge onto you because they have seen the truth.
So here again 4.34. So Krishna is telling that how we can actually know the truth by approaching a spiritual master, who is a spiritual guru. And second thing, how we can like actually approach him. Now that we know who is a spiritual guru, we got to know that he is selfless. He is actually like following the scriptures and he is not giving something on his own. He is only quoting from scriptures, and he is a true well-wisher. He just wants to help us, and he doesn't have any interior motives. And then we also get to know that he is from the parampara that's beginning from Krishna himself. Now that we got to know all these things, now we have to know how we have to approach a guru. So 2 things are of utmost importance here. So 2 words. One is submissiveness. What is submissiveness? It's something called humility. You would have heard of the word, right? So we see like even it's like when we approach a spiritual organization or spiritual guru, it's actually a 2-way relationship. So one way is the spiritual organization or spiritual guru, they very selflessly giving the knowledge to us in a way that we get benefited. It is said, no, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, where everybody sees that, yes, these are my people, because they are Krishna's kids. So they see that these are my people, they want to genuinely help us, and not like free advice gurus or not like these exploiting gurus. They want to genuinely help us from the basis of scriptures. And now that we know that, yes, they are following the parampara, when we go to them, now it comes our duty. So we have to be humble, and we should not be like in a very very challenging mood. So what is the problem in being challenging? Like again, like few of the interviews I was saying that very in a very challenging mood, people ask that why so? Why is this happening like that? Why is good happening to bad people? And why are people suffering and so and so? Then they question also that arrogance is there. Why is that arrogance? Again we saw that feeling that I know, I want to check that do you know? That is one feeling. Second feeling is that like they don't even know the aspect of respect which we discussed, like in Arjuna. Let's say we go to a genuine guru, and let's say we are very arrogant and we are in a challenging mood, we are questioning them. Why is this so? And the opposite person, we have to understand, if he is actually spiritual, if he is actually situated in the transcendental position, he will never answer us anything, because he doesn't want to prove his superiority to us. He just wants to help us. And if we are in a position to challenge them and not in a position to respect them and receive the help, it's like a one-way relationship where they want to help us, but we are in a challenging mood and we don't get help. And what is the second thing? Second thing is render service. So if you see like there is something called higher and lower position. So when we render service, when somebody is rendering service, which position they take? if let's say if I'm rendering service to somebody, so which position I'm rendering service to my office boss, which position I'm taking? Lower position, because like I'm doing service for someone. And here also, like if you see in general also, in like scientifically, higher potential to lower potential. Similarly, when we want to get knowledge, especially the scriptural knowledge, so when we take the position, lower position, when we become humble, when we do service, and when we take the position of a servant, at that time we see that the higher position, the guru who is there, the spiritual organization that is there, very easy, very receptive it becomes to get the knowledge. Like always be in a service attitude, not just for taking help, but also when we have some like questions for which we have to get answers. And we also see that how it is very important for us to know that when we understand what is the qualification of a guru, and when we understand who is actually not a guru, when we understand what is the expectation from the spiritual organization or spiritual guru, then we approach in the right mode, then we get the answers from the scriptures via these realized souls, via which actual help we are getting, the true help that we usually desire when we go through difficulties, we get. And we also see that how in general, when we are going through some difficulty, so it's very hard for somebody to consider these parameters, and also consider like the first aspect that I spoke about is how it's very difficult to ask for help. And second aspect I spoke about is how even if we like at a moment, even if we go to find a guru, it's because we don't know the qualification of a guru, it's very easy to get cheated. So what are the qualification of guru that I discussed? Selfless, teaching based on scriptures, our well-wisher, and parampara. And what are the 4 paramparas? First is Brahma, Sri Parampara, Rudra Parampara, and Kumara Parampara. So then also we discussed that why do we approach a spiritual organization? Do we approach to ask that, oh, I need promotion, oh, I'm going through this health issue for a long time. So what is the main intention to go to a spiritual organization? Is it to get peace of mind? Is it to get peace of mind or something material? No, it is to get something spiritual. If you remember that diagram where I spoke about, spiritual organization means where they speak about the soul and aspect of soul. Again, to like re-emphasize, see, definitely we are going through the material problems, so many material problems, and we want the solution for them. If you have heard the session that I gave about the karma philosophy, so if you have not heard, I believe we'll be having a recording. So like from the karma philosophy, we get to know that like so many things are fixed in our life. The amount of wealth that we are earning, 3 things are especially fixed. The wealth that we are earning, the health and death. You know, wealth, health and death. These 3 things are like fixed because of our past karma and our past impressions. And it's we who feel that yes, if I don't do this, I will get this. If I don't take care of this, I'll get this. Definitely we should put our efforts. There's no doubt about it. But we don't have to like put extra effort and put all our energy and mind into it. And the second thing is that we discussed about how material things, they have a beginning and an end. You can imagine any problem you take, starting with health also beginning and end. Any material problem that we have, let's say you're not getting a job, again beginning and end. Even if you get a solution also has a beginning and end. How long it will sustain? But spiritual problem, like especially the problem of birth, death, old age, disease, like how I discussed, it's there forever. And the spiritual organizations are the one who gives solutions to the spiritual problems. And the best example that I always give is, what is the use of painting cage and not feeding the parrot inside the cage. So currently we have this body, and all the problems, material problems that we are having, it's because of this body, correct? And then definitely we need solution for it. But on a higher note, what is the point in going to the spiritual organization and asking for problems? Like how I said, let's say you want peace of mind, you visit a counseling center, a psychiatrist, and get solution for it. They're having health issues, yes, go for the like medical treatment. And let's say you want to get promoted, or you want to get a stable job, get trained, go for it. There's nobody who's stopping you for it. But why to go for a spiritual organizations for all these things? Because spiritual organizations, genuine spiritual organizations, are something who discuss about spirituality, about the soul, how to feed the soul so that we can be happy. See, right now we see that so many things we are trying, correct, to become happy. We are like in general, we may accept or not accept that we are trying to give lot of patch-up solutions to all our material problems. But if the root is trained, if the root is corrected, if our spiritual connection with the Lord is established, you see automatically, like how I said, material problems doesn't go. It's not, if some spiritual organizations, if they say that by doing this the problems go, it's like how I said, it's completely cheating. The spiritual organization give you a perception to see that problem in a way that it doesn't affect you at all. Like last time also, if you remember, we discussed that how the biggest of the big problem, it becomes very small because we are practicing spirituality, because we know we are firmly fixed in the scriptures, we know what is the priority for us. But if we are not fixed spiritually, the smallest of the problems becomes mountain for us, and we just brood over these problems, and then we end up nowhere. So we discussed that how we go to the spiritual organization to get something spiritually, so that we are firmly fixed in oneself, so that when we start feeding our soul, then automatically rest of the things will fall in place, and problems come and go, and it doesn't affect us, and that is actually when we get actual happiness, actual what do you call, so-called peace of mind, or so-called happiness. And now what else we discussed about? Fourth, one other thing is, what should we go for the spiritual organization, what we should not go, that is clear, right? And fourth point we discussed about what should be our mood. What should be our mood? We discussed two things. What are those two things? Submissive, very humble, and then in a service attitude. So when we approach a bona fide guru who has all those qualities submissively, and when we serve him, and then when we ask the spiritual questions and get answers to the spiritual questions, then we can understand the answer comes with the empowerment actually. It comes with the empowerment for us to solve any problem of our life. See, when we approach a person, so we say that this Bhagavad Gita, it has solutions to all the problems of life. Why do we say it? Because actually if you read Bhagavad Gita, it doesn't, it's not like, okay, today my maid didn't come, what is the solution? Today my what is that, my vehicle stopped working, what is the solution? No, not these solutions. It gives us the empowerment to solve any kind of problem. And you would have heard about the famous quote, correct? Don't give me fish, but teach me fishes. So this Vedic scripture, why do we call it a gem? Because it is giving us that basis via which any problem of our life we can very easily solve when we have that Shastra Chakshu. Chakshu means vision. When we have the vision, when we look at any problem from the vision of Shastras, by the help of Guru, then we see that automatically we see that mountains and mountains of problems, they become moles, and we don't even get affected by these problems. And when we were discussing about the sadhu, so we discussed about STOP, correct? So I want to speak about Srila Prabhupada, who is the founder Acharya of ISKCON. So it was not very earlier that I came across Srila Prabhupada. I also came across Srila Prabhupada just in the recent years, that too via courses like this only. And the first example that I want to give is from my own life about Srila Prabhupada. So I started attending these sessions, and then I used to see some difference. And then when I went back to my hometown, I am basically from Udupi, Mangalore. So I was when we start doing something new, we are really like a child. We go and tell our parents, our friends that yes, especially when we go to some restaurant or from some new place, we go and we see something out of the world, then we like a child, we want to go and share it to others, like that. Then I went home after attending some 2-3 sessions, and then I was still like when I was traveling with my father on the bus, so I started explaining to my father that like this, you had given me the like Gita book when I was in 2nd PU, and when I was in college, I never opened that book, and now I got into like I met these people, Hare Krishna people, and I started attending these sessions. And I started explaining about ISKCON, how like we are getting free prasadam, how I was fed up from PG food, and every Saturday, Sundays I'm getting wonderful prasadam. When I was explaining these things, my father, he told me one thing. And until then, to be very frank, I didn't know much about Srila Prabhupada. Because if you see, whenever we hear about ISKCON, we hear, what is the word we hear? Hare Krishna. We hear Hare Krishna people, Hare Krishna and so on. We never hear so easily about Srila Prabhupada. But to my surprise, my father told that I don't know much about ISKCON, but this person called Srila Prabhupada, he has struggled a lot in his life to bring up this spiritual organization which is helping the people all over the world. You can see, out of nowhere, like he said that. And when I came back, that like when our near and dear ones, when they say something small, it has a like long living impact on us, correct? So similarly, when I came back, until then, maybe I would never have go down to Srila Prabhupada also, because even though Srila Prabhupada was here, I never considered him. But when my father told that he has struggled a lot to give the best of the best things throughout the world, to become a well-wisher for the world, and I was curious to know who is this person who wants to, like, who has struggled so much. What struggle has he gone through? There is one book, it's available even here. It's called Srila Prabhupada the Ever Well-Wisher. It's also called as the summarized version of Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. So I started, like, I read that book to some extent, and I got to know what are the difficulties Srila Prabhupada went through and how he is amongst the gurus, that like the qualification of the guru and the spiritual organization. I got to know the best of the qualities are there in Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada, when he was in his like the old age, and he was at his 70s, he travelled to West. So if you know the background of Srila Prabhupada was a very, very well settled like sadhu in Vrindavan. Vrindavan, all of you have heard about Vrindavan, right? So in Vrindavan, if you see any old people, when they are about to give up their life, so they want to go and settle in a dham, because they want to do bhakti and then they want to give up their body in the dham. But on the opposite end, Srila Prabhupada, we see when he was very, very happily settled in Vrindavan, and he was well known, he was respected by all, but he wanted to give this gem of Bhagavad Gita, give this gem of Vedic culture throughout the world. He didn't want to bound the knowledge of this Bhagavad Gita just to the boundaries of India. He's so selfless that he wanted to, at that peak age of 70, like, see, 70, why I'm saying, because it's a big age, it's a big number. Like these days, like I every week I travel from JP Nagar to here for these sessions. Just 2-3 weeks, like I was so enthusiastic, and now I'm all gone. And traveling from one place to another place in Bangalore itself, it's so difficult, and we get all possible aches, backache, leg pain, headache, and everything. And that too at this age. So we cannot even imagine at the age of 70 what will be the like position of a person. But Srila Prabhupada took all the efforts in like going to the West and giving this knowledge of Vedic scriptures all over the world. And if you get to know like few incidents like that I read from that book, I want to share that Srila Prabhupada he travelled not in flight. He travelled not even in the passenger ship. He travelled in a cargo ship. You know what is cargo ship? Cargo ship is like loaded with goods. Completely loaded with goods, and there is some space for the person who is like what do you call, the captain of the ship. There is some place for the captain of the ship to stay. In that ship he went. And also, like, first is he's in his old age. Second thing is he could have very happily settled and then done his bhakti. He took all the efforts and then he's traveling. Third thing is he's traveling without any money. You know, when Srila Prabhupada traveled, you know how many rupees he carried? It is mentioned in that book again. It is mentioned that 40 rupees. It's not even $40. 40 rupees he carried, and in that cargo ship. And recently, like how I said, I'm from the coastal area from Udupi. So there is a beautiful island over there called Saint Mary's Island. So over there, after I read this book also, like once when I had been to that Saint Mary's Island, so there is something called as paragliding. And you might be knowing. So they take us in the middle of the ocean and then they leave us, like they let us fly. So initially I was like very enthusiastic about all these things. So I had taken a ship in Udupi, so it is very, very famous. And we will reach an island over there. It's called Saint Mary's Island. And after that we will go further far, and then we will go for the paragliding. And till the island it was all like fun and fine, because like it was a very short distance and nothing happened. And when that second ride began, that time I realized that this sea travel is the dangerous type of travel anybody can take up. Because I had to my surprise, that day thankfully I didn't have any food or anything when I went there. If at all I would have had food, I don't even know what would have happened, because you would be knowing, the ship will be stagnant and the water waves will be so high, you will face that seasickness. And because of the waves of the water, see, you can see all over it is just water, and the air also, it has that sense of like the salty sense. And then the ship is hit by the water, the waves of the water, and you can feel that. And for a person who has never traveled in ship, you cannot even imagine. You get all sort of headaches, you get all sort of uneasiness, and you feel like just vomiting and just cleaning up from the stomach, cleaning up all the things in the stomach, and just feel light. And I cannot even imagine what Prabhupada did to go to the west, because Prabhupada travelled in this cargo ship, which is not even a passenger ship. There is no facilities. And when Prabhupada was travelling also, within no time he felt seasickness. Like for any person who is not used to sea, we will definitely feel that. And then he started feeling uneasiness, he started vomiting, he started fainting. And then that captain was there, Captain Pandya, his name, that is also mentioned in that book. Captain Pandya, he told Prabhupada, please leave. There will be some ships which will be coming in the opposite direction. You are already aged, so old. You cannot take this journey. Please leave. But Prabhupada, he was very, very determined. He said that no, this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, it helps people all over the world, and I want to give this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to everybody. And you'll be also surprised to know that he got 2 heart attacks. Not one. He got 2 heart attacks when he was on the ship again. And Prabhupada used to write his diary. Even that diary is available. It's we call it as Jaladuta diary. And in that diary it is written, Prabhupada used to write, especially after he got these 2 heart attacks, he's written that if I get one more heart attack, I will be no more. He has written. And we cannot even imagine the kind of struggle that Prabhupada took, because of which the knowledge of this Vedic scripture, especially the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, is there all over the world. And also, see, when we go to a place, let's say in India itself, what are the arrangements we make? First thing is money. We carry good amount of money. Second thing is, we ensure that the place where we are reaching, we know some people there. We have some place to stay there. And we have some people to welcome us. But when Prabhupada reached, in that book it is mentioned that when Prabhupada landed in the Boston, Prabhupada didn't know, should I go left or should I go right? You cannot even imagine what kind of feeling it will be. When we go to a new city and let's say our relatives who are supposed to come and pick us, they're half an hour late, we will feel so awkward, and we will be in devastation. But Prabhupada didn't know anybody over there. Prabhupada had just 40 rupees, not even $40. And if you see, Prabhupada's purity to give this scriptural knowledge to the whole world was so strong that in no time, in a period of 12 years, Prabhupada established 108 temples all over the world. See, I'm not talking about some small centers or small temples like this. They're huge, huge temples. 108 temples all over the world Prabhupada established. And some other Okay, you can watch this video. So then,
You wouldn't believe it. He's starting an effort, and it turns into a national movement. Someone told him the story. You wouldn't believe it. He's starting an effort, and it turns into a national
I want to make one revolution against materialistic civilization, so that the whole world may be happy.
He said that he would like to go to America. I said, you are crazy. Old man, you are going to die.
Suddenly this new force from the east was coming in. People began to look towards India.
There was a sense in this that the ancients knew something.
If I see this person, this soul, struggling just like I'm struggling in my body, then all of a sudden we're family. And I have a reason to love you. That's deep.
Our vision is to see everyone become happy.
It gave some sort of backbone to my life.
Prabhupada gave us. You can imagine 70 plus years and he has travelled the globe like 14 times. Why has he travelled the globe? Not to earn money or earn name fame, to give this Krishna consciousness to others. Because he is the one who is on the spiritual level, he is seeing a soul. He needs that, he knows that everybody on the bodily platform, they are trying to find happiness. But he cannot find the happiness, like how I said, just by painting the cage, what will happen? No happiness. And these Westernites, especially when he went, there was something called as hippie movement which was very popular. This hippie movement, if you know, people at the age of people, they come out of their house and they want to stay on their own. And it was mentioned that they don't believe anybody over the age of 30. And what was Srila Prabhupada's age? Srila Prabhupada's age was 70. So he went to the West to do something impossible. In fact, one of the reporter, he asked Srila Prabhupada that Srila Prabhupada, why did you come to the West? Because already Britishers came, they looted everything and they have taken everything. So did you come to why did you come? What more? So Prabhupada says that I came to give something that the gem of the thing that you forgot to take. You Britishers, you foreigners, you forgot to take. That knowledge is the Vedic scriptural knowledge which is beneficial to every single soul. See the money that they looted, the Kohinoor and everything that they looted, how long it will come? One person holds the Kohinoor, then that person dies, then second person holds it. So how long it will come? But Prabhupada gave something to the world that which is eternal. And Prabhupada, he translated more than he has given us more than 80 volumes of book. He has translated all these scriptures from Sanskrit to English. Was it possible for us to read Sanskrit? Do you understand? He knows that fools like us, we cannot even read Sanskrit. So, you know what was Prabhupada's schedule? Prabhupada used to sleep every day at his age of 70s, I'm telling you, not in the young age. At the age of 70, he used to sleep 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. And not just at India, wherever he used to go, let's say he travelled to US, then he travelled to UK, he was not even bothering about jet lag. He used to just set his time, and let's say now the time is 12, he would forget to sleep because his sleeping time is done, he would just start with the translation. And 10 till like 12 till morning he used to translate all the books that we have. Srila Prabhupada, this the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, all these scriptures, wonderful scriptures that we have, he has translated it as it is for us. And when again the reporter asked, like, you have created a revolution throughout the world, like like how do you feel when the reporter asks? See, all these interviews and everything, it's in the YouTube itself. We can also share some of these things. When you go back and read, like, this is where actually when you will get goosebumps knowing about what Prabhupada did to us. And Prabhupada, he was so selfless. He never he ensured that his name will never come in front. Because like how I said, when we say about ISKCON, what do we say? We say Hare Krishna people when we say that. Very rarely people know about Srila Prabhupada. And he gave us like 108 temples, and he made 5,000 disciples all over the world, and he did it in an advanced age between 70 and 82. And he's the, like how I said, best example of this talk, selfless, like how I discussed that how Srila Prabhupada never considered about name, fame or anything. See, you can imagine 108 temples. In one of the luxurious temples, Srila Prabhupada could have stayed, correct? The rest of his life. But Prabhupada didn't stop traveling at all. He traveled all over. He traveled to even places like Russia. You can imagine, you will be surprised to know that next to India, the highest number of devotees who are practicing the Vedic culture are in Russia. And in Russia, even up to now, if they find them practicing something else other than their own religion, they will gunshot, dead. In that country, Prabhupada has gone and preached. And even like you can Google for Pakistan Rath Yatra. Even in countries like Pakistan, Kazakhstan, and Bangladesh, any nook and corner of the world, you see they're following this Vedic culture, because this Vedic culture is the root of. It's basically the root of getting solutions to all the problems. And Prabhupada, at that ripened age, he went all over. He took all the troubles, the 2 heart attack, no money, struggle. He went all over the world to give this knowledge. And also you can see teachings from scriptures. Any Prabhupada's books, if you see, like how I said, Prabhupada, when they asked them, what are you feeling, how are you feeling, you have created this revolution, Prabhupada said only one thing: all the credit goes to my Guru and Krishna. My only credit is that I have presented the things as it is. The Bhagavad Gita that we have, what is the quote that is written? Bhagavad Gita as it is. Because Prabhupada ensured that only if the message of Krishna reaches to us as it is, without any concoction, that makes effect in our life. Because otherwise, if it gets mixed, like if it becomes khichdi, then there's no point in touching the souls and in impacting the souls. And third thing is that how Prabhupada, even in Bhagavad Gita, wherever Prabhupada is quoted, he has quoted references from this Upanishad, from this Puranas. There is nothing that Prabhupada has given on his own. And third thing is our well-wisher, like how I said, who can be a more well-wisher than Prabhupada, who has given us this wonderful community called as ISKCON. Such a selfless community. If you see the free prasadam distribution that is happening all over the world now, it is because Prabhupada wanted it. Prabhupada wanted to ensure that there is no soul who is left hungry. This one small story I'll say, then I'll end this. Actually, it is said that Prabhupada, when he was giving lecture in one of the countries, that is in Canada also, he was getting disturbed by the outer fight that is happening. Outside somebody was fighting and he was getting disturbed. And some dogs were barking and continuously he was getting disturbed. And when Prabhupada goes to the window and when he speaks through the window, he sees that 2 little kids, they are fighting with the dogs. It's a place of garbage and somebody has left some food there, and these kids, they have taken the food. The dog is also wanting to snatch that food. So it's like dog and the boys are fighting for that same food. And when Prabhupada saw that, he had tears in his eyes. And then what he declared? He declared that 10 kilometers around ISKCON temples, nobody will be left hungry. Even now, in all the ISKCON temples all over the world, there is a program called Food for Life. Even in our temple, recently we have started this initiative called Food for Life, where it is ensured that every poor person who is around, will get fed. And you see these sessions that we are conducting, this prasadam, nothing is charged. You cannot even imagine what like what more like Dalushing organization can give us. And what is the expectation? The expectation is just that we read scriptures and we like correct our life and we remain happy and we give the scriptures to the next set of people so that they also follow the scriptures and they like become happy. And Prabhupada never enjoyed any luxury. And fourth one is Parampara. So Prabhupada came in the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Parampara. From Krishna, Brahma, you can see the Parampara line in the Bhagavad Gita book. So if you, again today is a very wonderful day, if you don't have Bhagavad Gita, see we can imagine Prabhupada used to sleep 2 hours to write that book. So definitely how much efforts we need to take to read that book. We can just purchase and read that book. At least this much we can do to, as a matter of gratitude to Srila Prabhupada. So in that, if you want, after the session you can meet me, I can show you. In one of the pages, very clearly it is mentioned how Krishna, Brahma, then Narada, up to Madhvacharya, then further up to like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada is perfectly coming in the district succession. This was again to show how Prabhupada was helpless. This was in the last end moment where Prabhupada was about to leave his body. He's still, you can imagine, he's not able to write, but he's dictating using the dictaphone. You can see how Prabhupada was like so weak. He's not even able to speak. But still, even in that age, he wants to help by translation, by giving purpose. So we can see, like, we cannot even imagine what Prabhupada has done for us. That's why, like, when I got to know about Prabhupada, I decided that, like, I have never seen a person like this, who is so selfless, who is so fixed in the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, of Vedic scriptures, and who is like next to Krishna, he is our eternal well-wisher. See, why should somebody do something to us? Leave everyone. We are here, Prabhupada doesn't even know about us. He is giving us this Vedic scriptures. He is making us know how we are suffering. He is giving us the solutions via Vedic scriptures. He is giving us prasadam. He is giving us this wonderful association. Even if we pay no outside, we won't get such wonderful association of devotees who are so selfless. So we cannot even imagine what Prabhupada has given us. So as a matter of gratitude, at least we can take the teachings of Prabhupada very seriously. Read Bhagavad Gita daily. Do this mantra meditation, which is again connecting to Krishna. At least one round of chanting, if we do, our heart purification happens, and automatically we can understand Bhagavad Gita, which Prabhupada wanted all of us to know and come out, like get rid of the problems of life, true problems of life. And then, it's so nice to see that even on a festival eve you are all coming and you are taking part. So my humble request is, don't miss these sessions. We are also putting a lot of effort so that you get benefited the most out of these sessions. And see, no matter how much you watch it online, the effect that we have one-to-one, that is different. So yeah, that's why I make a humble request that whenever you are here, at least make it a point to come. Definitely, when we go to hometown, it's difficult, but at least you can watch the videos and then you can follow up with the volunteers. I'm sure all of you would be getting calls from the volunteers, correct? See, these are also like working professionals who take time out of their life because they have seen how selfless Prabhupada is, how selfless Prabhupada's disciples are, and they want to selflessly help us. So please take this help, and then you can like help us in various services also, like how at least in taking up this reading of Bhagavad Gita and chanting seriously, we will surely see that when we get something that is like extraordinary, we will like to share it with others. So you will also start sharing. In this way, we spread the act of gratitude. We spread this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, because Krishna consciousness is susukam. It's very happy, and it's a process which gives us eternal joy, not on the platform of the body, but on the platform of soul. So with this, I will end the session. So if you have any questions, we can ask.